You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
And welcome on in to Monsters After Midnight. Now, if you joined us for the road trip of the doomed, you're in luck, because we're continuing that road trip through the American South. We met the monsters of the great American West Coast. Now we're going to the great American South, continuing our study of the greatest unknown cryptozoological, UFOzoological, monster zoological event of history, and that is the great UFO flap of the 50s and 60s in America and around the world through our examination of the great American South. So let's just jump right on in. We'll be starting with the great state of Alabama. In Alabama, they have what's known as a booger, as the locals called it. And it created quite a stir around Clanton, Alabama in the fall of 1960. Several witnesses reported seeing a tall, hairy creature around Walnut Creek. A posse was formed and found footprints which resembled those of a giant ape. Shortly after, the posse quit the chase. The Reverend E.C. Hand saw the monster near Liberty Hill, grabbed his shotgun, and pursued it, but it got away. "I can make my dogs catch a mule," Reverend Hand said, "but I could not get them to venture toward that booger." As time passed, there was more reports. Some witnesses claimed the animal made a sound like a woman screaming, a common cryptid trait. The Ohio grassman and other cryptid entities. There's a really insane TikTok video of a trucker at a truck stop, and you hear this wild screaming in the woods. Very common theme of Bigfoot sightings is this wild scream, so it lines up, this Alabama booger. Others said it sounded more like an elephant. It also prowled peach orchards, apparently sampling peaches. You know, and skunk ape likes to sample apples. There we go. 5 years later, on August 30th, 1965, the Union Banner at Clanton carried this illuminating story. Some 6 years ago, several people out on Walnut Creek, a mile from Clanton, reported seeing some animal like a bear. It made some curious sound at night, kindly like a woman in distress. It ranged up and down the creek for a distance of some 10 miles. Then, some 4 years ago, something made tracks in peach orchards some 3 miles south of Clanton, near large swamps. It was supposed to vanish in the swamps at night. A cement cast was made of the track, about the size of a person's foot, but looking more like a hand. The cast is still somewhere in Clanton. Have you seen the Clanton cast? Let me know. That's all Alabama's got. The booger. The Alabama booger in the 1960s. Now down in Georgia, in the late 50s, we had ourselves a couple sightings as well. In August 1956, Joseph Whaley, an employee of the Georgia Department of Forestry, was driving an open Jeep about 30 miles outside of Edison, Georgia, when a 6-foot-tall, dark gray, hairy, man-shaped creature blundered out of the brush and chased him. It grabbed at him, apparently trying to haul him from the Jeep, scratching his arm. Whaley said it looked like a gorilla, except it had claws and long, pointed ears. He was not anxious to go back for a closer look. That same year, a man named Tant King, great name, was walking in a field near Edison, Georgia, same town, one night in 1956, when he was frightened by a little naked hairy man about 3 feet high, who came out of the nearby woods and walked along the edge of the fence. Other men called to the scene found tracks and strips of white curly hair about 3 inches long on the fence. The hair was analyzed at a local crime lab and found to be human. A young reporter covered the story and wrote a yarn about a creature 8 feet tall. Much to Mr. King's annoyance, the zoologist named O.K. Fletcher speculated it could not have been a kangaroo. So let's give some context to that kangaroo statement and to the 8 feet tall statement, right? So first, Keel's like, the news reported that the creature was 8 feet tall. Well, that's common. In every single one of these entity encounters or light in the sky encounters, there's something that the media who reports it leaves out. They leave out the most strange part of it. Always. Always, always, always. That's what's going to happen. So in here, they just switched it to make it 8 foot tall to make it seem more like a Bigfoot instead of like what it was, which was an entity that was tiny, a little entity, a little guy. And we read about these guys a lot in dimensions as well throughout history. Since time immemorial, thousands of years, since the beginning of humankind, we've had encounters with these tiny, hairy entities. It's just interesting that for whatever reason, the newspaper man decided to make it 8 feet tall. Those were the encounters in Georgia in 1956. Now from Georgia, we're going to go to the great state of Mississippi. Now down in Mississippi, we had ourselves 2 sightings. The first of which happened in Lost Gap, a heavily wooded area about 5 miles east of Meridian, Mississippi. It was gripped with monster mania in 1962. It began when a group of teenagers reported seeing a green-eyed monster 6 to 9 feet tall. Soon, there were dozens of other corroborating witnesses. Chief Deputy Alton Allen said he was convinced that the monster existed, and a huge search party was organized. But we know that when search parties are organized, typically they're organized with, let's just call it an aura of anger. One of, let's find this monster, root it out, kick it out, or murder it. So imagine you're a cryptid. You're allegedly real. If you're real, you're an ancient entity. You're an entity of a different consciousness than humans. You're an entity that lives in the woods. You're an entity that is of whatever environment you're from. So you probably have different senses than a human does, like animals do. They could sense when some bad shit's coming faster than we can. So you can imagine then a cryptid would have those same senses. So if you're going in to the forest with a mob of people looking to murder this thing or kick it out of its home, it's going to know you're coming and not be there. So let's see if this mob was successful in capturing the Mississippi monster. They organized bloodhounds and a helicopter was brought into play, but guess what? Nothing was found. 9 years earlier, according to one story, railroad men working in the area where the monster was later seen found their compasses would not work. An incoming tinfoil hat theory from me. These entities are much like what we read about the UFOs in Jacques Vallée's Dimensions. He argues that these UFOs aren't extraterrestrials. They aren't like scientists from other planets coming to study us and they're mechanical machines. They're interdimensional. I would say the same thing about cryptids and beasts and monsters that people encounter on the road and beyond, in the backwoods and back alleys. I feel like they're interdimensional. They're able to poof in and out of existence, and they appear in different forms depending on the region. And thank you for joining me for my tinfoil hat theory. Now fast forward to 1966, still in Mississippi. 2 truckers, William and James Cagle, were headed for Marietta, Georgia, on a Tuesday night, November 8th, 1966, when they rounded a curve near Wynona, Mississippi. A strange creature ran down a slope towards their vehicle. When my headlights picked him up, he was on our left side, James Cagle explained. He was aggressive, angry, and ready to attack. The face looked like a mixture of a gorilla and a human. The arms and legs were very large. The chest was at least 3 feet thick. His eyes glowed in the dark, and he did not seem to have pupils. That sounds a lot like old Orange Eyes. It looked us over, then slowly raised an arm, like some people do, like you would do to greet somebody. I had seen all that I wanted. I floorboarded the accelerator, and we moved out of there. Maybe it wanted to say hi to you. You know, maybe it was going to exchange a gift. What if it had like a enchanted piece of wood or something? You know, you got to stick around and see what the Bigfoot wants. But anywho, rumors were flying around Winona, Mississippi in the fall of 1966. A 7-foot-tall monster with bright red eyes and covered with hair was allegedly on the prowl. One man claimed it had 4-foot shoulders, which tapered to a narrow waist. It was the size of a Kodiak bear, he said. Local rumors that the thing had been shot or captured proved groundless. Because guess what? You're never going to shoot or capture a Bigfoot. It's not going to happen. It's going to outsmart you. The woods are its domain. It's going to poof out of existence. And your ass is going to shoot at it and not hit it. So stop trying to catch it. From the great and wild Mississippi, we're going to take a trip down to Kentucky, old Kentucky, and learn about their Kentucky Fried Cryptids. Now, down in Mississippi, if you remember, our first sighting was in 1962. Let us note the sighting in Kentucky. What year did it happen? Well, June of 1962. Trimble County, Kentucky was plagued by monster mania. A farmer named Owen Pike said he saw the thing when it attacked and mauled his dogs, one a collie, the other a German shepherd. He described it as dark, 6 feet tall with hanging arms that reached to its knees. On June 8th, Siles McKinney claimed the creature killed one of his calves. The calf carcass was found 15 feet outside of its enclosure, and the gate was still shut. Well, that just sounds like a cattle mutilation, not typically associated with Bigfoot. In my mind, it's a government program, cattle mutilation. I don't think interdimensional entities or entities from space would need to fuck around with cattle. But Shadu, this guy believes his calf was murdered by Bigfoot. Possibly. But still weird that the calf carcass was found 15 feet outside of the enclosure. Claw marks were found around the barn, and traces of dark hair were also discovered. Examination of the calf indicated that it had been killed by a blow to the head. Other animals in the area disappeared or were found mutilated. Sheriff Curtis Clem took the matter very seriously. 7 police dogs, a helicopter, and a posse scoured the area. Large footprints were found, like those of a giant dog, but various eyewitnesses attested that it was a large ape or bear, a gorilla or a big something or other with reddish hair. And that was the general description. J. Dan Webster, professor of zoology at Hanover, Indiana, said, "I suspect it was a Great Dane, of which there are several in the area." Simultaneous with the Trimble County scare, citizens in Hazel, Kentucky were out hunting for a snake 28 feet long that had been seen there. Again, all sorts of wild shit sighted in the 60s. From big old snakes in Kentucky to wild men. Now, this J. Dan Webster, professor of zoology here, saying it's a Great Dane, to me, just discounts every local's opinion. Because locals who live in the area, and if there are Great Danes in the area, that means these locals see them a lot. They would be able to know the difference between a Great Dane and like a Bigfoot, I feel like. But hey, that's just me. And those are the sightings in Kentucky. Next up, we're going to Tennessee. We're going straight to Tennessee. Now, down in Tennessee, the Butternuts reported seeing the wild man of the woods that was allegedly captured in 1878 and placed on exhibition in Louisville, Kentucky. He was described as being 6 feet, 5 inches tall, with eyes twice the normal size. His body was covered with fish scales. In 1959, in Two Claps Chapel Road, residents outside of Knoxville, Tennessee fired a shotgun at an apparition 8 to 10 feet tall. The creature had come up to the window on the front porch of Earl Taylor's house. John Rosenbaum joined Taylor in fighting it off. They heard thumps on Taylor's car and later found 2 long scratches on the hood that had not been there when he polished the car earlier that day. The creature disappeared without a trace. Brenda Ann Adkins reported meeting a hairy creature on Mont Eagle Mountain north of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Been to Chattanooga. I was able to go see a Chattanooga Lookouts game. Chattanooga is awesome. Go see it. Go visit. However, but down there in the spring of 1968, old Ann Adkins stopped near the edge of a cliff to take some pictures when she became aware of a nauseating odor and heard the noise in the woods behind her. Turning, she saw the thing lumbering towards her. I absolutely was frozen with fear, she said. This thing was at least 7 feet tall and must have weighed several hundred pounds. I'll never forget his enormous chest and those huge arms and legs. Ooh. His body was completely covered with reddish, dark hair. The face was a mixture of an ape and a human. I still have nightmares about that afternoon. He seemed to be angry and was growling. I thought he would push me off the cliff or something. Then he stopped about 6 feet from where I stood, cocked his head in a quizzical way, and just stared at me. He studied me for a few moments and then seemed to smile, made a little blubbering noise, and walked back into the brush. Wow, what an encounter. And those were our encounters down in Tennessee. Now, from Tennessee, we're going to visit Texas. Big old Texas with some big old cryptid encounters. And by that, I mean just one. Down in Lake Worth, a major reservoir of Fort Worth, a hairy monster lives there. Back in 1967, something described as a satyr-like ogre was scaring folks around Moss Point at the lake. A band of teenagers searched the area, but never even caught a glimpse of it. Greer Island is where about a dozen people say they recently saw a monster. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram reported on July 12, 1969. Descriptions of the monster have ranged from half-man, half-goat thing with fur and scales to a 7-foot, 300-pound hairy beast being that throws auto tires 500 feet. The first 1969 report came on a Wednesday night, July 9th, 1969. When 3 couples told police that the creature had pounced on their car and left scratch marks on the hood. Another motorist said that he saw a big and hairy thing which emitted a squall and then tossed a tire and rim more than 500 feet. A local naturalist suggested that the culprit might have been a playful bobcat. I mean, I've seen a bobcat walk through the creek in my backyard, and I don't think they could toss a tire. They're like little guys, you know. They're like you, Mewtwo, if you were like maybe twice the size of you, you know. I don't think you could toss a tire. Could you? Maybe. That's Texas. Lake Worth, Texas, with the Lake Worth monster. Actually a very notable cryptid. We read about him a lot in our field guide to North American monsters. I believe there's a couple pictures of the beast as well. But that's Texas. Now from Texas, we're going to go to our final state of the 1960s cryptid and UFO explosion, and that is West Virginia. Good old West Virginia to wrap us all up. Down there in the summer of 1960, a group of young men were camping in the woods near Davis. One night, one of them was cutting wood for the fire when he heard a noise and felt someone poking him in the ribs. He thought one of his friends was trying to scare him, and turned around annoyed to find himself confronted with a horrible monster. He described it. It had 2 huge eyes that shone like big balls of fire, and we had no light at all. It stood every bit of 8 feet tall and had shaggy long hair all over its body. It just stood and stared at us. Its eyes were very far apart. By the time the boys had recovered from their shock, the creature had shuffled off into the darkness. They broke camp early the next morning. Gigantic footprints were found where the creature had been, but the witnesses didn't feel like following them. I mean, could you blame them? Same year, 1960, a West Virginian named W.C. Doc Priestley claimed that a hairy humanoid ruined the electrical system of his automobile. That summer, numerous people around Parson, West Virginia, allegedly saw a gruesome 8-foot-tall thing covered with shaggy hair and equipped with 2 huge eyes that shone like big balls of fire. In October 1960, Priestley was driving through Monongahela National Forest, about 3 miles north of Marlington, West Virginia, when his car, which had been purring like a kitten, suddenly sputtered and stopped. When I saw it, Priestley later told reporters of the Charleston, West Virginia Daily Mail, January 5th, 1961, to my left beside the road stood this monster with long hair pointing straight up toward the sky, like static electricity. A group of Priestley's friends were driving on ahead in a bus when they noticed that he was no longer directly behind them. They turned around and drove back to look for him. I don't know how long I sat there, Priestley continued, until the boys missed me and backed the bus back to where I was. It seemed like this monster was very much afraid of the bus and dropped his hair, which had been standing on end. And to my surprise, as soon as he did this, my car started to run again. I didn't tell the boys what I had seen. The thing took off when the bus stopped. Priestley again started to follow along behind the bus, and when his car started to act up a second time, I could see the sparks flying from under the hood of my car as if it had a very bad short, he noted. And sure enough, there beside the road was the monster again. The points were completely burned out of my car. I think by that he means spark plugs. The bus backed up again, and as soon as it appeared, the monster melted into the forest. And in the same year again, 1960, at 11 p.m. Friday, December 30th, as he rounded a curve on a lonely backwoods road near Hickory Flats, West Virginia, between Braxton and Webster counties. Now, Braxton is also home to the Braxton County Monster, another infamous cryptid. Charles Stover came upon a monster standing erect with hair all over its body. Stover said that he almost hit the thing and stopped his bakery truck a short distance away to look back. The hairy 6-foot-tall man-shaped figure stood beside the road watching him. He stepped on the gas and finally stopped at a restaurant filling station where he told his story to a group of men. They immediately armed themselves and went to the spot. They found strange marks on the ground and that large rocks had been overturned by something. Scattered residents in the area said they had been hearing unusual cries in the woods for several weeks. The Stover story is another classic in monster lore. And that is our road trip through the great American UFO and entity flap of the 1960s in the great American South. Now, if you're asking me if I believe these stories that were just told to us from a different time, absolutely, 100%. These people encountered an entity or another dimension or a shared hallucination that needs to be further researched. That's all I got for you. Thanks for joining me for Monsters After Midnight. Join me next week. We're going to talk about more weird shit. Most likely we'll be going through the southeast of America, Florida, all that fun stuff. And the entity sightings there during the great entity and UFO flap of the 1960s. So I'll see you then. And until then, have a great week. Bye-bye.